The tragic tale of Kirsty Wilkinson and Paul Gravitt is one that encapsulates the harrowing effects of an abusive relationship, the gradual erosion of one's independence, and the devastating consequences of unchecked control and aggression. This story sheds light on the complexities of domestic violence, manipulation, and the heartbreaking aftermath that families often face when a loved one falls victim to such circumstances. Early stages of Kirsty and Paul's relationship. Kirsty Wilkinson's relationship with Paul Gravitt began in the early stages like any other. At first, everything seemed normal. They shared a life together, and from the outside, their marriage appeared to be a typical, if not slightly unconventional. However, as time went on, Paul's behavior began to shift, and what was once a balanced relationship slowly became more strained and unhealthy. As time passed, Paul became increasingly assertive in his desires. He began to introduce others into their personal life, claiming that it would add variety to their relationship. While Kirsty was firmly against this idea, she found herself reluctantly agreeing to avoid conflict. This was the beginning of the erosion of her sense of self. The dynamics of their relationship shifted, and what seemed like a minor change at first soon grew into a much more significant issue: control, manipulation, and erosion of independence. Kirsty tried to maintain the appearance of a normal family life. However, internally, she was slowly consumed by doubt and fear. As Paul's influence over her grew, she began to feel as though her body and life no longer belonged to her. Every decision she made seemed to be dictated by Paul, and any hope of regaining control was slipping away. She felt trapped. In an effort to maintain some semblance of normalcy, Kirsty often recorded her thoughts in a journal. Yet, despite this outlet, she lacked the strength to stand up to Paul's growing control. She was facing an internal battle that was slowly eating away at her. The once independent woman was now a prisoner in her own life, struggling to keep what little independence she had left. Escalation of physical abuse. Paul's behavior soon escalated from emotional manipulation to physical aggression. The first incident of physical confrontation occurred a few months after the couple's wedding. One evening, after an argument about Kirsty's earnings, Paul became violent. The argument turned into shoving, and eventually Paul struck her. This was a shocking experience for Kirsty. However, Paul quickly apologized, promising that it would never happen again. Unfortunately, these apologies were mere temporary gestures. Over time, the episodes of violence became more regular, and the severity of his actions grew. Paul began using aggression as a tool to break Kirsty's will. When she refused to comply with his demands, he escalated from threats to physical violence. One particularly disturbing incident occurred when Kirsty attempted to discuss her desire to leave her job. Paul rudely interrupted her, called her ungrateful, and struck her again. This was a turning point for Kirsty. Not only did she feel physically attacked, but her autonomy and ability to make decisions for herself were being stripped away. Family concerns and warnings. As the violence and manipulation continued, Kirsty's mother, Catherine, began to suspect that something was wrong. She noticed that her daughter was unhappy in her marriage and tried to have an open conversation with her about it. However, Kirsty either avoided the topic or deflected the discussion. Catherine grew more concerned, sensing that Paul posed a significant threat to Kirsty's safety. Kirsty, however, dismissed her mother's concerns. She was convinced that with patience, she could change the situation. Despite the growing tension and the increasing evidence that her marriage was toxic, Kirsty held on to the hope that things might improve. Her inner turmoil deepened, but she stayed in the relationship, unable to summon the strength to leave. The night of Kirsty's disappearance. On the evening of March 28, 2009, Kirsty and Paul went to a nightclub in Swansea with friends. Throughout the night, they consumed alcohol and other substances, which was not unusual for them. Witnesses recalled moments of tension between the couple, with Paul appearing irritable and Kirsty seeming to avoid conflict. The night culminated in a heated argument around midnight, after which Paul left the party and went home alone. Kirsty, not wanting to follow him immediately, decided to stay and finish the evening with their friends. Those who were with her that night described her as appearing tired and downcast, but trying to hide her emotions. Later that evening, Kirsty called a taxi to take her home. The driver later stated that he dropped her off at the house, and Kirsty confidently walked inside. This was the last time anyone saw her alive. The day after. The following day, Paul told Kirsty's mother, Catherine, that Kirsty had left early in the morning, supposedly taking some belongings and cash with her. He claimed that he hadn't heard anything because he was asleep. Paul even suggested that Kirsty might have gone to see another man. This explanation immediately struck Catherine as suspicious, especially since Kirsty had left behind her bank cards and other personal items. An unusual move for someone supposedly planning to start a new life. Adding to the mystery, it was revealed that Kirsty had attempted to call emergency services during the night, but the call was disconnected due to a poor signal. Investigators later discovered that, around the time Kirsty allegedly left, neighbors reported hearing muffled screams and sounds of a struggle coming from the house. This, combined with the lack of any evidence that Kirsty left voluntarily, led her family and investigators to suspect foul play. The discovery of Kirsty's body. The search for Kirsty began after she was reported missing, with police focusing on Paul as the primary suspect. Paul claimed to have been asleep and noticed Kirsty had taken a few belongings and left. However, his story did not align with the facts, as Kirsty had left behind her bank card and other important items. During the initial search of their home, police noticed suspicious changes, such as freshly painted ceilings and missing carpets. Neighbors reported hearing muffled cries and sounds of a struggle the night of Kirsty's disappearance, but no one had contacted authorities at the time. A crucial piece of evidence came from Kirsty's failed attempt to call emergency services, which raised suspicions about Paul's involvement. On April 6, 2009, the investigation took a tragic turn when a truck driver found a human hand in a suitcase near Bridgend. The police were immediately contacted and found Kirsty's body inside the suitcase. Forensic investigation and confirmation of foul play. Forensic examination of Kirsty's body revealed that she had suffered severe injuries. Her nose and jaw were broken, and there were numerous bruises and scratches on her body. She died from a traumatic brain injury caused by repeated blows to the head. Additionally, there were signs of strangulation, indicating that Paul had attempted to asphyxiate her during the altercation. Investigators determined that her body had been moved from another location before being left in the ditch. Traces of blood were found in the living room, which Paul had tried unsuccessfully to clean. There were also paint stains on the ceiling that appeared to cover blood splatter marks. These pieces of evidence, combined with witness statements and Paul's odd behavior, were crucial in proving his guilt. Paul Grabbett's arrest and trial. Paul Grabbett was arrested shortly after the discovery of Kirsty's body. Despite denying involvement, investigators discovered that he had used Kirsty's bank card to withdraw money and visit a massage parlor the day after her disappearance. The investigation revealed that an argument broke out between Kirsty and Grabbett, leading to an attack and a strangling attempt. After Kirsty's death, Grabbett moved her body to the living room and tried to fit it into a suitcase. Despite considering dismembering her body, he abandoned the idea. Grabbett eventually forced her body into the suitcase and disposed of it in a roadside ditch. The trial of Grabbett began in early 2010, with evidence including bloodstains in the living room and testimonies from witnesses who reported hearing the sounds of a struggle. Kirsty's diary entries described her fear of Grabbett, his manipulative behavior, and aggression, illustrating a life filled with control, intimidation, and emotional and physical abuse. The verdict and aftermath. Paul denied any wrongdoing throughout the trial, claiming that Kirsty had left their home voluntarily and that her death was caused by an unknown person. However, his account was contradicted by overwhelming evidence and witness statements. The jury found Paul guilty of Kirsty's murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 19 years. While the conviction brought some relief to Kirsty's family, it could not undo the devastation of their loss. The trial revealed aspects of Kirsty's life that her family had never known, and the details of her suffering left them heartbroken. The proceedings served as a painful reminder of the dangers of toxic relationships and the power of control and manipulation. Kirsty's story is one of sadness and loss, but it also serves as a call for change, encouraging individuals to speak up, to help those in need, and to end the silence surrounding domestic abuse.